What's up, everybody? My name is Shannon and I am still waiting for my Seder. Today we are finally talking about We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. So my cousin recommended this to me a very long time ago and I was like, oh, they don't have it at my library, so yeah, that's gonna happen. And I had actually kind of been looking for it anytime I'd go into a bookstore, and it's very difficult to find, but I finally found it. It was short, so I was like, okay, let's get it, let's give it a shot, and it is so good. Like, thank you, Megan, for telling me to read this, because honestly, this has like changed my life forever because of how amazing it is. And I also want to say I hate your guts for making me read this book and giving me all the feels. But anyway, We Were Liars is about your typical 1% white family. They're rich, they vacation every year on their private island with their pretty mansions, and you know, all seems totally perfect. But not really. Not as all as it seems with this family, and that first reveals itself with one of the main characters, and that's Gat. He's one of the aunt's boyfriend's nephews, so he just kind of comes because he's friends with one of the older kids, and he's very different from them. For starters, he's not white, he's Indian, and he has a lot of ideas. He thinks very differently from everyone else, especially the other liars, which is Cadence, Mirren, and Johnny. And this really gets to Cadence, and she's our narrator throughout this book. Seeing him and how he thinks and what makes the world different really changes the way she thinks about everything, and she falls in love with him, and she just starts to become a better person. But then something happens and Cadence has an accident and loses her memory of the entire summer, and she doesn't know what happened, but she does know that she's bedridden with these migraines. She is gone for 2 years, she can't go see her friends, her cousins, and she's emailing them and they won't respond to her, and she just doesn't know what's happening. But when she finally goes back, she decides that she's gonna figure out what went wrong when she sees them, because she just needs to right the wrongs and find out what's happening. But when she gets there, something's not right. The big house that her grandparents lived in has been torn down and a new one's been built in its place, and things are missing from her childhood, like the dogs and things that were in the houses, and she doesn't understand where they've gone, and no one will talk about it, and everyone's telling her that they're not allowed to tell her, that she has to remember what happened on her own, and that all will make sense if she can just remember. And when she does, my heart was literally ripped out of my chest. What makes We Were Liars great is really all of the issues that it deals with, like what people are behind their masks. It deals with racism, it deals with materialism. It's just truly amazing because it does it in such a frank and blunt way, especially with the writing. At first it was a little off-putting because it's very just in your face. It doesn't dance around anything, and at first it was kind of hard to read, but as you go on it really helps get it in there. And I actually broke my rule and started writing in the book. Like, I just would underline stuff. I don't know if you can see that, but I would underline things and put things in brackets, like there's one, just because I would get to this one part and it would just hit me over the head with this idea that I'd never thought of before, or I'd never thought of it from that direction, and it was just really amazing to see. So instead of taking a bunch of pictures, I underlined them so that if I ever read it again, or if I ever let anybody else read it, they'll know that this part really got to me, and it's really what made the book come alive for me. Okay, so this is about to get super spoilery, so go ahead and hit mute until this tag goes away, and if you don't want me to ruin the ending for you. The accident that happens is that the four liars, Cadence, Mirren, Johnny, and Gat, set fire to the big house that their grandparents live in when everyone was off the island. They did this because their moms had been fighting over their inheritance, and their grandfather was pitting them against each other and just reveling in it, and they were sick of seeing this materialism, and they were sick of seeing their family torn apart, and they wanted to put an end to it. They wanted to do what they were afraid to do. They took matters into their own hands, and they burned down this big symbol of their family to show that we can all be a happy family. We need to just forget about these materials. That's not what makes us happy. But it completely backfires because Cadence is the only one that makes it out alive. And when I read that part, my heart completely shattered because you don't know that the entire book, when I went back and I kind of looked at it, no one ever talks to any of the other three except for Cadence because they're dead, and I just, it blew my mind, and like everything was missing because they burned it all down, and the dogs were gone because they died in the fire, and it just, and nobody would tell her these things, and everyone was sad because their children were gone, and part of them still blames Cadence, and she has these migraines because she is racked with guilt, and she just blacks it out of her mind and doesn't remember it, and it all just comes back to her, and she, for a second, doesn't know how to go on. This is what's really beautiful about this book, because it teaches, and I'm quoting, that tragedy is ugly and tangled, stupid and confusing. Life is complicated, things do not fit perfectly together, and when tragedies happen, it's a mess and it takes forever to build back up. And that's really, this book does such a good job showing that. And it even says, it ends with, "My full name is Cadence Sinclair Eastman. I suffer migraines, I do not suffer fools. I like a twist of meaning, I endure." Because that's what happens when you survive a tragedy. You go on. You keep going to honor those that have fallen, and We Were Liars is absolutely beautiful for showing that. Okay, that got a little heavy, but I promise next week will be a little bit more lighthearted. Speaking of, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I talk books every Monday, and if you haven't already, be sure to be checking out the DCast.com. They talk everything at Disney, Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars, and if you're a Disney fanatic like me, you'll really love it. That's everything I got for you today, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye!